Hello, folks. Welcome. We're going to get started maybe in about a minute. We know folks are still joining us. I think next webinar, I need to remember to have music playing at the beginning. It's always this funny, awkward silence at the start.
Can you just sing in the background?
I mean, I could, but maybe not. Hello. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome everyone to our joint language and social processes and second language research special interest group joint webinar, where today we're exploring the topic of entering the job market. We're going to take some time in a moment just to have everyone introduce themselves. But before we do that, I do want to help give you a few tips on getting acclimated to this space. So as you can see, there are slides projected. We will be sharing those as well as the notes that we take during today's webinar with you following the session. We also, as we're going through this, you'll notice that there's a good chance that questions you asked when you filled out the registration are included on the slides. If you have other questions that pop up for you as we're going along, please feel free to share them using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom application. And as we are able to fit them in relation to the topics we're covering, we'll go ahead and include those. Let's see, so I'm gonna go ahead, oh, and also I wanna point out at the bottom of the screen there, you can see that we're encouraging you to live tweet as we go along. At the bottom of the screen are both the Twitter handles for the LSP and SLR SIGs. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to our guest speakers today. And I'm going to ask Michiko to get started.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Michiko Hikita, and I am an assistant professor at Ohio State University in the Department of Teaching and Learning. And my program area is language education and society. So I'm affiliated with the Language and Social Processes SIG, and I am halfway through my 4th year.
Hi there, I'm Alex Panos. I am in my 1st year as tenure track faculty at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, which is a metropolitan and community engaged research and teaching institution. I did my PhD at Indiana University, and I'm happy to be here with you all today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Simons. I'm at Michigan State University in the Department of Teacher Education. And I'm a literacy and language scholar, so I am associated with both the LSP SIG and the SLR SIG. And I am in my 4th year at Michigan State University, and I completed my doctorate at the University of Michigan. And I also am really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So my name is Christina Ponzio. I am a grad student, and I'm one of your hosts here today. I'm at Michigan State, and I'm going to also ask the 2 other grad students that are helping run the show today to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Delaman, and I am a grad student rep for the Language and Social Processes SIG, also in the academic job market as we speak. So I'm looking forward to this, and I just want to say thank you, everyone, for participating and joining for this webinar. I'll be working sort of behind the scenes taking notes today.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Kennedy. My video is turned off because I am controlling the slides behind the scenes. I'm at Michigan State University in my 4th year, and starting this summer I'll be preparing to be on the job market. So it's great to have this conversation with all of you tonight.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. So as you can see, as you look at the agenda, we're actually ahead of schedule, which is great because it leaves more time for the questions. We're going to start by spending some time going over the job search process and ins and outs of that. We have a handful of other questions for additional considerations. And then we'll have a bit of time at the end just to wrap things up and direct you to information about the next webinar we will be hosting. So let's go ahead and get started. So with this first set of questions, these are all related to getting started with the job search. And so I'm going to ask our speakers today to share the wisdom that they have about what we can expect with the timing of job postings, where we should be looking for those, and how we can figure out whether we're a good fit for a particular job posting.
There's some really good questions here. Let's see, I guess I will speak a little bit about, this is Michiko, by the way. I don't know if you can see me. I'll speak a little bit about timing, and then maybe some of my comadres can contribute too. So for me, I started really putting my job materials together over the summer before I was going on the job market in the fall. And then, jobs started getting posted maybe late August or early September, and they sort of roll out over the course of the fall semester. I belong to the listservs for AERA and for LRA, the Literacy Research Association, which is where a lot of them came from. I also had a lot of people I knew would email them to me if they felt like it was a good fit for me. The Chronicle of Higher Ed is another place. Academic Keys is another place where you might be able to find some job postings. The job call for my current position didn't come out until January, which is kind of late. But so I guess the reason I say that is if you are currently on the market, keep looking, because I think that calls still come out even this late in the semester.
Yeah. To add to that, there are a number of websites that you can go on and then set up like an alert for yourself so that you just get an email with a list of the job postings that apply for you. And AERA, I can't remember if you said that, but AERA has a really great listserv of like all jobs, and you can kind of get creative with how you might look at where you can head in your career. I'm going to speak to this sort of like organizational question because I like organization. And I did keep a spreadsheet, and I like color coded it, and I put all the information from each of the postings in there. I put the link, I put the contact person, details on every single item that they were asking for to be included in the portfolio they were looking for, and to be uploaded onto the website or sent via email, and how I was going to submit those materials, how many letters of recommendation I might need, if there was a teaching statement or a philosophy or research statement, diversity statement, things like that. And that really helped me keep organized and keep on track. And I would note when I applied for things, because no one job timeline is the same at all, is something to keep in mind. Like everything depends on the particular search and the search committee and the institution. But a spreadsheet like that I found absolutely invaluable, and I really liked color coding it. It made me feel like I was doing something when I didn't have a lot of control over the situation.
And I'll add on to that. So being on the other end of it now, being on committees of doctoral students who are on the job market, it's really helpful if you share that with your committee members, or at least the people who are writing letters for you. And it's just nice to have access to that document. So if it's a Google sheet or something along those lines, as you make changes, and keep them informed of kind of what letters of recommendation are coming up and whatnot, they can refer to that table as well. And that can be helpful. I'll also just speak to the third bullet. So having been on a search committee, and also being on this other side of it, having been on the job market, I remember being on the job market and wondering like how, none of the jobs I looked at seemed to be exactly right. Like there was something that I was always kind of lacking or, didn't quite have. And that's, I've learned now that if it's required, it's really required, at least at our institution. If we say it's required, we can't go back on that legally. Preferred, we have flexibility. So, it's not, if you don't meet all those qualifications that are preferred or minimum, but you still feel like there are lots of aspects of the job that do fit for who you are and what you want to do, then I would say go for it. And how do you know if you're a good fit for a job? It's hard to tell until you're there. And even when you're there on campus for the interview, sometimes it can be hard to tell. I would say think about what you like to do most right now as a doctoral student. Are you really enjoying your teaching? Are you really enjoying your research? Do you just love to write and you don't want anything to get in your way of, you and your writing time? Because that will help. So for example, if you're looking at a job posting and it says that they don't often say, but if it says, this is they don't often say specific load in terms of how much you'd be teaching and how much time how many courses you'd be teaching, but they often say like, this is a teaching institution and we value teaching right up front, then you can expect to teach 3 to 4 courses a semester. And you probably wouldn't be as expected to do as much research or writing. Versus a Research One university, if the first thing they're talking about in the job posting is, this is a research intensive university. We are looking for people who have a really clear research trajectory and publications or potential for scholarship. You can expect to be devoting a lot of your time to writing and focusing on publishing in top tier journals. And if that's what really excites you and you really want to get out there and pursue your research agenda and write off your dissertation, then that might be more your type of institution. I'm going to stop there.
Wonderful. Thanks for getting us started with the conversation. We'll go ahead and move on then. And I think Alex got us going here in terms of how to stay organized. But also we were wondering lots of things about how to prepare materials for going on the job market. So what makes particular materials resonate with a search committee or makes an application stand out? What tips do you have for writing the different statements that we need to share? How do you decide who to ask for letters of rec? And then what sort of writing is best to share if a writing sample is necessary?
I'm just going to jump in and speak a little bit about your materials and how to prepare them and how to think about what might resonate. I think first of all, one of the things that's the most sort of terrifying about the process is this idea that suddenly all of these thoughts and ideas and plans that you have are becoming very public, and it's very personal and tied closely to your heart. And the best way to begin to think about what might resonate with a search committee is by reaching out to the people in your life, your advisors, your friends, your colleagues who have gone before you, to ask for their materials, to look them over, and to ask them to read your materials, which I think was the hardest thing for me, asking people to look over what I had written, even though I've been publishing, and doing all sorts of stuff. Like this, for some reason, really felt scary. But get over that and do it anyway, and use their materials and poach from their structure and poach from how they sort of make their case. And it's not going to be the same case because we're all individuals, but poach those things that stand out to you as really being powerful, and ask people to read and give you feedback as soon as possible. In terms of what makes your applications stand out, I was given very sound advice that in all of your materials, you want to say something that you've done or something that you want to do, and then follow it immediately up with, or lead with even, the physical or concrete outcome from what you've accomplished. So if you're saying you're a good teacher, you say, these are my teaching evaluations, and this is what they say. If you say, I want to follow this track of research, you say, these are the ways that I've started that. I have this Spencer Foundation grant already out. I have this paper that was just published. Like you want to sort of go back and forth between the concrete and the aspirational, so that you, as a new person on the market, don't just sound like potential. You sound like someone that's also accomplished a lot, which you have just in grad school. There, you've accomplished a lot, and you should speak to that.
I'll second Alex's suggestion of getting mentor texts from people. We often have never written these kinds of things, and so it's hard to write something you've never written before. And so having a good mentor text, and having a lot of different kinds of mentor texts, I think can be really helpful. With regard to who might write letters of recommendation, I would suggest people who know whatever it is that you're trying to highlight. So it could be like if there is a faculty member who has seen you teach, or maybe has co-taught with you, and they might be able to sort of highlight that part of you as a scholar, or the people who know your research well, if that's what you would like to be highlighted. I don't know what makes an application stand out, except for, I think, honesty and passion for whatever it is that you do, like just helping people to see that you love what it is that you're doing, or that you're excited about it, and excited to share it. And with regard to writing samples, I think the sample that I shared was a co-written article that I co-wrote with my mentor, Ramon Martinez. So it wasn't something that I had sole authored, and then I just sort of narrated what it was that I had contributed to that particular piece, so that I could talk about myself as a writer, even though I didn't share a sole authored. I didn't have a sole authored piece at that time, which I actually like to share with people, because I think sometimes we are told, especially, like I came from the University of Texas at Austin, so I came from a big research institution, and I'm at a big research institution. And as I was going through school, it was like, you're never going to get an R1 job unless you have a sole authored piece, which of course made me panic. But I didn't have one, and here I am at Ohio State. So people are looking for both the potential that you have and those concrete things that show that you are working in that direction.
Great. Yes, I agree with everything that's been said. I'll just add a little bit more. So another thing that speaks to what you do and who you are those faculty letters, those letters of recommendation. And I would say you want to pick faculty who are, at the top of their field. If you have those people on your committee or in the department that know your work, it's great if you can get faculty that know different sides of you. So your advisor might know you really well as an advisee and a research assistant, but someone else may know you really well as a course instructor. And so ideally you have people who can speak to different sides of you, and also maybe faculty who are in slightly different areas of the field. So maybe someone's more of a linguist, and someone else is more of a critical scholar, and someone else is more of a reading comprehension person. And so it's nice if there's also some opportunity for diversity there, because who the people are that write your letters are just as important as what they say. Let's see. And tips for writing the statements, especially if you don't have a lot of teaching experience. I would, you've got to be honest about what teaching experience you do have, and highlight other ways that you've been a mentor, or maybe, informally teaching, because the advising is also considered teaching. And so if you have been a doctoral student, an advanced doctoral student mentor to an incoming doctoral student, that counts. And then I would be honest about the courses that you have taught, and talk about why those courses are important or essential to the field. So for example, if you've only taught one methods course, that's really important, because those methods courses are hard to teach, and they need people who can teach those courses. So even though you might not have taught a lot, you can point out the importance of what you do know how to teach. And then also writing sample, I put in a grant application, a grant proposal that I had received, because I also, like Michiko, did not have a sole authored publication. I didn't have the publication that I did as a co-author with my advisor. I was second author on, and that didn't come out until after I was already hired. And so I second what she said. You know, if you don't have anything published yet, don't let that discourage you. I think I also maybe sent in a comprehensive exam piece. So, and in one piece I had written an article as a teacher. I think I sent that in at some point. So also ask your advisor about which pieces you should send in.
I think the one last thing that I would add that was really hard for me is that this is not the time to be humble. We have to kind of we have to talk about ourselves in a way that we're sort of unaccustomed to, and it maybe feels a little bit uncomfortable to be like talking about your strengths sort of unabashedly. But I would say, you know, grab the bull by the horns and really lean into that, because that's what these are for.
Yeah, and a concrete way to do that, I got this advice from Lenny Sanchez, who's amazing and was a wonderful resource for me. But when he read my letter, he pointed out the areas in my letter that I should bold, because those are the things that I want to emphasize, and it's a way to emphasize it without having to be like, oh, I'm so wonderful, I'm just, you know, like the most amazing person on the planet, because that also doesn't read very well. Like, there's a really fine line in the tone that you take in how you can present yourself as someone who's competent and proud of what they've done, and, you know, doing the sort of really egregious, like, you know, showboatsman thing. So he suggested bolding, like the particular ideas, like one per paragraph kind of that really you want to highlight. And that was a way that I found to manage that really difficult experience of feeling uncomfortable.
So many great insights. So the next set of questions have to do with participating in phone interviews and site visits. And I also know that Amanda is currently on the job market. So Amanda, if you have anything else you want to chime in about the sorts of questions we should expect, or how the whole process works with the phone interviews and site visits, that would be really great.
Okay, I'm happy to share.
I'll jump in. They're going to ask you to talk about your dissertation. They're going to ask you to talk about your research interests. They're going to ask you to speak about teaching, and they are going to ask you something connected to those that gets at the heart of what the institution is about. So it will vary, but they will definitely say, like, tell me about your research, tell me about who you are as a teacher, when you've looked at our program, things like that, like what has come up for you. And you want to have a nice, short, sweet way of talking about that, because you do not have a lot of time on those 20-minute phone interviews. And then when you get to the site visit, you're going to have a bazillion questions that are like never ending, and you'll be exhausted by them, but they'll want you to speak more concretely about about those same kinds of questions they asked in the phone interview. So they'll want to know, like, if they ask you about teaching, they'll want to know specific courses that you're interested in, and they'll want to know that you have looked over their programs and have a sense of like what you could teach and how you would teach it. Like, so it's not a time to be vague when you get to the site visit. When it comes to your research, they're going to want to know not just like aspirationally what you want to do, but how you see yourself carrying that out, what journals you'll be publishing in, what pieces you have in the pipeline and where they're going, who you'll be collaborating with, what grants you've got in the works now or that you've already submitted. And you're going to, as you get to that site visit, want to be very, 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 very concrete about that. I think that I will defer to other folks for the rest of this, but the research piece, you want to go through everything on their website. You want to have read all of the profiles of every faculty member in the department. And at least for the department you're looking at, you want to read at least one piece by that person. And I would try to find the piece that's the most cited, that seems like maybe their crowning glory. You might want to know who they've studied with, where they went to school, things like that. I stock syllabi so that I know what they teach. Like if they're saying, oh yeah, we teach children's literature here, how would you teach children's literature? Like you want to know like, oh, well, I saw that you use this text. And I've used that text before, but I've also started really reading this other text that's really exciting to me, and I'd love to incorporate both of them. You want to find a way to show that you will add to their program without ever coming across like you are critiquing it or criticizing it. So there's a fine balance. And the more research you do, the better able you'll be to sort of walk that line and be excited about joining them and also showing how you would contribute.
I think the question that I was the least prepared to answer was about teaching and what doctoral courses I would want to teach and or design, because I just didn't imagine myself as a post PhD student. And so I wasn't ready to even think about that. So I think that was something that I was not ready for. And as Alex sort of mentioned, it's a grind. It's a 2-day, like you're exhausted. You have to be on all the time. I'm pretty introverted, so it was really hard for me. I did a lot of, I also practice yoga. So I did a lot of legs up the wall in my hotel room, like afterward. Cause it's really tiring. It's also fun, I think. And you get to talk about your research, to people who are interested in it and really want to know more. To walk you through a little site visit, and Amanda maybe can add to this because she's been on them very recently. You arrive and you might have dinner with a group of people, and then first thing in the morning you're going to have breakfast with someone, and then you have your research presentation, and some institutions you have to do a teaching presentation, and then you're going to meet with the dean and meet with the research people and meet with like associate deans of this and that. It can feel, and you're going to meet with graduate students and small groups of faculty, and then you're going to go to dinner, and then it feels like it's nonstop. It is nonstop. And what my mentor told me was sort of there's two parts to this. When you are invited to a campus visit, what he said was like they already know that you can do the work. So what they're looking for is the ways that you talk about it and the ways that you sort of envision where you're going. And then do they want to work with you? Are you collegial? Are you someone who's open to new ideas? And so I think that those are important things to just think about, that, and that you are also trying to see, like, is this a place where I can see myself? Do I feel like this is a place where I would be supported? And you might ask about what kind of mentoring they offer to junior faculty, and what kinds of structures they have in place to support you. I think smile, be rested. Because it's a grind.
Okay, so let's see. That's all that. I'll speak to the second question. How does the search committee narrow the pool of applicants when offering phone interviews and then when scheduling on-campus interviews? It probably varies from institution to institution. I know in our case, if I can remember correctly, I'm not going to remember the exact numbers, but we had, I don't know, over 20 something applicants, I think 30 applicants for a position. We had phone interviews, I believe, with 10 to 12 of them. And then 3 were brought to campus, I think. 2 to 3 is typical in terms of how many they bring to campus. And how do they narrow the pool of applicants? It's a combination of things. Like I said, they all have to meet the required the required qualifications. And so if there are applicants that don't, they won't get the Zoom interview. But if an applicant meets the required qualifications, then the other things they're going to look at is, what kind of scholarship have they done? Who have they worked with? How much teaching have they done? What have they taught? What kinds of conferences are they presenting at? Because presentations at conferences do matter. People on search committees know what conferences matter in their discipline, which conferences are peer-reviewed and kind of like the most prestigious in their field. And so they look at things like that. So even if you haven't published, where you've been presenting is also valued. Yeah, so those are some of the things that are considered when narrowing the pool of applicants. What research should we do? Yeah, that was already addressed. What questions? I would ask questions about your load, your teaching load, how many courses a semester, and I would ask what the support is like for travel, for conference travel. How much you should be given a little bit of money for that, and that varies from institution to institution, so I would ask that. I would also ask about mentoring and support for new faculty. And I would also ask about, if it's a research-intensive institution, what supports they have in place to support you with your grant writing and grant proposals.
I think if you have an opportunity as a graduate student to serve on a search committee, I would recommend that. I had that opportunity, and it helped me to sort of understand some of these things, like how the pool is narrowed and what the kinds of questions that are asked during phone interviews or on-campus interviews. Yeah.
I'm just going to say one question that you absolutely have to prepare for is why here? Like, they're going to ask you, why are you interested in X university? It doesn't matter what institution it is. It doesn't matter what the focus is. They want to know why. And you can't say, oh, it's an R1, because that's not a good reason why you're interested in Michigan State or Ohio State or IU or whatever the R1 is. And if it's a teaching institution, you can't say, oh, I love to teach. Like, yes, everyone who's applying to this job is interested in those things, or else they wouldn't be applying to this job. So that's where you look at their mission statement, and you look at what they're teaching now and what their students are doing and what that institution values. And it's also going to help you sort of figure out, well, what do they value, and is it what I value? And, the fact that I can speak to this by synthesizing across like my goals as a researcher, as a teacher, as someone who provides service to the community at large, like, does this institution seem like somewhere that can support me in that? And if it can, then it should feel pretty fluid, that conversation. If you're struggling, and if you continue to struggle, that's a red flag.
I have a few things I can add, and I feel like I love that we're getting all of these varying perspectives from the different levels, our panelists here. I definitely, absolutely agree with what Alex just said in making sure you have a solid answer and why you want to be at the institution. But another question that's come up for me in quite a few Zoom and phone interviews is, what would you like to tell us about you that we haven't asked before? And I found that as I'm prepping for these interviews, that I'm actually preparing that answer very differently for each location, because different locations have a few things listed, and the required qualifications are also preferred. And I want to make sure, if it didn't come up in any of my answers, that I say that. Also, laughing at you, Michiko, about the yoga. I definitely, anytime they offer a bathroom break in an on-campus visit, say yes, because that's the only time you get alone time. The schedules can look very different from campus to campus, but I think now that I'm looking at it from this side, that when you have an opportunity to meet 20 people in one day and 30-minute conversations, you can ask the same question twice to multiple people, and you can really get a feel of the health and the culture of the environment. And you're looking for a home too. It's not just them looking for your home, and I think it's easy to lose sight of that. I think anytime you have an opportunity to share suggestions or ideas for collaborations as far as research or co-teaching with any of the committee members or any people you meet on campus, I think that also really helps provide a solid footing of how would you fit in that work environment. I think that gives a lot of insights there. So those are a few suggestions other than what I've heard our great panelists talking about.
And I'll just add a couple more things. One is they're not allowed to ask you about your personal life, whether or not you're married or have kids, or, you know, whether or not you want to move, or whether nothing, like your sexual orientation, nothing. They're not allowed to legally. That doesn't mean some people won't try to get that information out of you. And I would say, you know, I tend to lean on being very transparent and honest, and that can be a little bit dicey in this situation. So I would say saying less, in my experience, is safer than saying something that may jeopardize your standing there, whatever that may be. You know, oh yeah, you know, my kids and I, but you know, I don't know what, you know, you just don't know what judgments people might be making. So I would say err on the side of you're there as a professional, and they don't need to know anything personal about you at this point. And even if they're super warm and fuzzy, and I know maybe other people have other experiences. And the other thing that I think was a tough question on my on-campus interview was at the end, I think of the end of the whole thing, they asked me, so now that you've had all this time to talk with all these people and ask all these questions, what did they say? Something like, so who would you like to collaborate here with, and why? And so you also have to listen and take notes and be thinking along the way, like, okay, maybe I could work with this person or this person, because I didn't have time to do a bunch of research in advance. I did a little bit of website looking, but I couldn't go as deeply as Alex was suggesting. And so I think I was probably very underprepared compared to Alex. So at the time, you can ask people questions and learn about them. And if you don't want to sound like you haven't read anything of theirs, you can say, so what are you currently working on? And that gives you the kind of, they don't know if you've read all of their work or none of their work with that question.
Carrie, that's brilliant.
Yes, I love that idea. And also, different places are different. Michiko and Carrie are both at like big R1s that are like very desirable, like, you know, like places for a lot of people. And going to the institution I'm at, I think it is a desirable place to be. I think it's a wonderful institution. But going to somewhere like Omaha, where maybe people might think it's not somewhere you're willing to move. They didn't ask explicitly about my family situation, but they didn't do anything illegal. I'm not saying that, but they were wondering if I was going to take the job, if I was offered it, because it's not in LA or New York or, you know, somewhere that people want to go, you know, according to conventional wisdom. And so I was able to slip in without it being inappropriate. You know, my husband's an independent contractor and he comes with me. We're a package deal, you know, and that you're like, this is not something that's suddenly going to blow up in your faces if you offer me this job. So that's it. I think it really depends on the institution. And that goes back again to that why I hear question. Like every institution has the right to ask that, and you have the right to answer it in a way that fits with your life, and something to think about. But yeah.
Fantastic. So we've made it through the phone interviews and the on-campus visits, and we're at the point where we get to negotiate a job offer. So we're wondering, besides salary, what are some important additions that supported you during negotiations? Consideration of technology, travel, summer pay. How should we negotiate that startup package, and what is and is not okay to ask for? And finally, when is it appropriate to discuss a spousal hire?
Okay, so I'm going to suggest the thing that I suggest to everybody that I talk to about the job market. And that is, I had the opportunity to participate in the National Center for Faculty Diversity and Development, their boot camp. And I did it my second semester, and it just set my writing life on track. And I don't think that I would have been able to do it by myself. It's an expensive program. And so if you can get that written into your offer letter, that I would highly recommend that. So it's the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity, NCFDD, and they do a faculty boot camp. I do every semester, I do the alumni program because it just helps to keep me accountable and really taught me how to structure my time in a way that is aligned with the ways that I'm evaluated for tenure. I see Carrie nodding her head, so I think that she must be one of my compatriots in that. And then I think all of these things are questions that you can ask. Like you might ask when you're on a campus visit. So like, what is the policy for technology, for getting new technology, or how does the department support travel expenses, or what is the policy around summer pay? So I think those are all things you can ask, and then they're all negotiable, right? So sometimes you might have like they might not be able to give you the salary that you want, but they might be able to put it into startup funds, or they might be able to give you more course releases. So in my first 2 years, I got 2 course releases. And so I could sort of use them whenever I wanted to sort of help me to get adjusted. And so I think those are all things that can be negotiated. I don't know what is not appropriate to ask for. I'm trying to think about that. You can talk about moving expenses. So they will help you to pay for moving expenses. And sometimes it's like, we will give you this much cash, or we will pay for this company to move you. You can ask about coming out on a house hunting trip. And oftentimes they will give you some money to come out and look for a place to live. I don't know anything about spousal hires, so maybe someone else has some input.
I was just going to add that negotiations look really different depending on the institution you're at. So like while some institutions are able to offer you like big lump sums of startup pay from which you might purchase your technology and pay for graduate assistance, and can maneuver that into travel money, like a stipulated account to add to, maybe the $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 or whatever it is that they offer you. Other institutions can't do that. And so they negotiate in different ways. And I'd say something to keep in mind is that your salary sticks with you for a long time, like a long time. And so when you think about like, you want to make priorities about what you want and align them to the institution that you're negotiating with. And so like if you're aware, or if they've made it clear that there are some items that just aren't on the table for them, you can lean into other spaces. And when it comes to what's not okay to ask for, I agree. I think anything you can ask for, but use the cues along the way to figure out where the hard lines are and where the soft lines are. Because in that negotiation process, you're not just negotiating for yourself, like, and you are, and you should be firm about what you need to be able to do your job, but you're also negotiating with people that you'll be working with, and you want to get what you need and not, burn bridges along the way. So there are horror stories about people's job offers being revoked, and that's a thing that you can read about on like the Professors In blog. But I think more so, you want to be firm and clear about what you need to do your job, while also accounting for the limitations of whatever the institution might have around what they can actually offer you, because there's not just a completely unlimited pile of money floating around at these public and private universities that we know are increasingly strapped. So
let's see. So to add to that, some things that I've seen people ask for and get that I didn't think about asking for was one of the things Michiko said, which was to provide the enrollment fee for the National Center of Faculty Development Diversity, because it's about, what, $4,000. But after that, the alumni program, if you are at an institution that's a member, is free. So, you know, you pay this one-time fee, and if the institution itself is a member, you can keep going and have access to all the tools. I would second that. I did do that program as well in my second semester. And yeah, it's an excellent support for writing. I've seen people, they offer a doctoral assistant the first year when you get in there. And I've seen people say, can I please have my doctoral assistant my second year? Which is such a smart move, because the first year, really, you're getting your feet on the ground. You are, you know, learning your way. You're writing off of your dissertation, and unless you just know exactly, like, I need help with, you know, all this transcription or something, then really your work I think you'll find it more beneficial to have a doctoral assistant in the second or third year. So if you can push that out. Another thing I've seen people ask for is a course release the semester before they go up for tenure. How smart is that? Gosh, I wish I'd asked for that. So, you know, they might say I also was allotted 2 course releases in my first 2 years. And I wish I had asked for one the semester before I went up for tenure. That would have been smart. And another thing I've seen that I would have done too is to delay my startup funds. So they told me I have to use my startup funds in my first 2 years. I would much rather have had startup funds for years 2 and 3 than my first year. Again, because you have money, and what do you need to spend it on, really, when all you need to do, at least at an R1, is to sit and write and teach, right? So, and I asked about spousal hire. I didn't ask about spousal hire, but I talked about my spouse not having a, you know, position, and, you know, anyway, and so they created an opportunity for him there, which he didn't take. But I did that during the negotiation process.
So many things that I think we would have never thought of. So these next 3 questions have to do with establishing an online presence and a publication record. So we're wondering, what role do web-based platforms like LinkedIn or Twitter have on a job search process? Is it important to have a professional website in which to be included? And then is publication a necessary requirement to enter the job market? And I know you spoke to that a little bit already. Should we consider delaying our search or graduation to focus more on publishing if we're not there yet?
I didn't have any of these things. So I feel like I'm probably like the least prepared person who went on the job market, and I got a job. So that should be hopeful for everybody, I think. But yeah, I still don't really have any of these web-based platforms. Like, I have a LinkedIn profile, but I don't do anything on it. I have an academia.edu. I don't really, yeah, I feel like don't wait until you feel like your application is perfect, because it will never be there. And so I think we do the best we can with what we've got. So don't worry about things, I think, being perfect. If you have it and you've already sort of invested some time in it, then keep it up. But if you are starting from scratch and you already have your 40-hour-a-week job of writing your dissertation, and then you're also on this 40-hour-a-week job on the job market, and then you're also teaching 2 classes, it's not worth your time to build up a LinkedIn profile or to build a professional website. That's my thoughts.
I agree. I didn't have any of those things. I had a lot of publications and in varied places, and I was proud of my publication record. But I see no reason to delay your search. If you don't get a job in your first year on the job market, maybe you'll have had a chance to publish something during that year and have it be a collaborative piece and something that's feasible. for while you're writing a dissertation and doing the 7 40-hour a week jobs you're doing. But yeah.
I also agree that you can wait on those things if you don't have them. I now do have Twitter, and I also have a professional website, and I was fortunate to be able to participate in a faculty program where we had these tech people help us build our online presence. And so that was just something I signed up for in my second year, and I'm glad I did it, but it was not something that I came in with. And publication, again, it depends on the institution, but they need to see potential for publication. And if you have publications already, that's great. I didn't, and I got a job that I'm very happy with. And I was told that I should delay I'm going to answer this last question. Should we delay our search/graduation and focus more on publishing if we are not published? I did have someone advise that I do that, someone who I trust. And so it was a concern. And they were adamant about, that this is something I need to do while I'm a doctoral student. I need to do this before I secure a job. And then I had other people saying, you have this, you have the opportunity to apply for this job, and this job is a really good job, and you should just go for it. So that's what I ended up doing. But gosh, I wish I had published more as a doctoral student. And looking back, I did it in 4 years too. So would I have taken an extra year if I knew I could still have the same job? Yes.
Great. So we have the next slide there is the set of other considerations. I'd like to spend about 5 minutes addressing these, and then we'll wrap up for the evening. So how does the application process for applying for a research-oriented or teaching-oriented position look different? What are the pros and cons of applying for postdoctoral positions? Did you apply for any? And then for international students entering the job market, how can we leverage our experiences during interviews? What can we do to counteract certain disadvantages, such as not attending or teaching within U.S. K-12 setting?
So a couple things. One, I applied to both research and research intensive and teaching intensive oriented institutions. And in terms of the physical documents that you submit, you just want to sort of highlight different things and emphasize different things and put the emphasis on the particular needs of that institution and what you'd be contributing there. So, physically within a letter, if I'm applying to a research institution, research in that section goes at the top and it takes up more of the space on the letter than teaching, and then service at the bottom is a little space. And if you're doing a teaching focused institution, depending on the teaching focused institution, like where I am now, while it's a teaching institution, they also have a really strong emphasis on research. The teaching still came first because I knew it was teaching, and teaching and research were pretty equal, and then service was still at the bottom, kind of small. So things like that, in your CV and in your letter are kind of how you want to do that. I applied to a couple postdoc positions and I didn't hear from any of them, and I don't know if it was helpful for me to do that or not at all. I think somebody else can speak to that. And international students, everyone has advantages and disadvantages in their application. And I think international students, one of the things that you'd want to do is so many institutions right now are pushing their global initiatives and global connectivity and thinking about education and literacy, language, and all of the things that all of us do in global ways. And so you want to emphasize that you have the experiences you have on a global stage, and that you bring all of that with you and don't look at any of that as a disadvantage. That's an insane advantage. And if you have a chance to get into K-12 schools while you're here, do it and be able to offer, insights about what you saw here that is different from what you see at home. But I think that one of the things that that idea of counteracting disadvantages, it's not a disadvantage. You have advantages, and that's how you always want to spin it. Like you always want to be, sort of talking about like what you do well and what you would contribute and how you could do that and what partnerships and exchange programs and, study abroad programs that you would be able to bring to the program that you're applying to because of your advantage as an international student. International applicant, not student anymore. Sorry.
So we do have a couple questions that have just popped up in the queue that I'm going to throw out there. And certainly, Michiko and Carrie, if you have anything you want to add with these three, that's great. The first one I want to throw in is, can you talk about how to navigate a case where maybe students have not worked with well-known people in the field, how they should approach it if they don't necessarily have the same connections that someone else might have?
Sure. So I'll talk about connections in a moment, but I want to talk just for a moment about some of these questions. So one thing I will say about postdocs is that they are extremely competitive. I think that postdocs are more competitive than faculty positions, so they can be really, really hard to get. One of my very good friends, I call her my academic life partner, Leah Duran, she applied for I don't know, something like 15 jobs and 5 postdocs, which I did not. I was told to apply to more than 5 and less than 10. So I applied for 6. And she didn't hear back from any of the postdocs because I think that they're just really competitive. There are some, like if you're a quantitative based researcher, I feel like postdocs are easier to come by than if you're qualitative. I was just talking to one of our international students today about the job market in the US and his not having teaching experience in K-12 schools. And exactly what Alex said, he has had a lot of other experiences teaching. So he was a teacher of English in his home country. So that's teaching experience. And I think, with the forced migration patterns and the number of people who are just moving around in the world, that is an asset. And he has taught English to the international students who have come to our institution, and then he has taught in the writing center. And what I told him was that writing center work that you've done is amazing, because what you have done is help people to grow themselves as academic writers, and that's what people are looking for when they are bringing in new faculty, because one part of our job is to mentor doctoral students who are coming through. So that's huge. So really speak to the things that you have done well, like Alex said, play to your strengths, and think creatively about the kinds of things, that experiences that you have had, that are teaching experiences, even if it wasn't a K-12 school. The question was about working with not working with people who are well known in the field. My sense is that, at least in my experience, what we have been looking for is not who you've worked for, but what the individual applicant has done. And so I think being able to situate yourself within the field, so being able to cite the important people, but I don't think you have had to work for the important people in the field. But you do have to kind of know the lay of the land. My sense of it is that that's more important than if you studied under one of those people. So there wasn't anyone at my institution who had my focus. So I took a disability critical race lens, and I do work sort of in disability studies and education / literacy, and there wasn't anyone at my institution who did that. But I can talk about that body of research, and I can talk about the people who do that work. And that, I think, is more important than having actually worked with one of them.
And to speak to that last point in terms of your letter writers, I think earlier I said, it's helpful if those people are, prominent in the field, and that is just a matter of kind of who knows who, and you don't have any control over that. So for letter writers, rather than, I agree with Michiko, I think it's certainly more important to speak to what you do know and to situate yourself in the field. And for letter writers, I would ask that your letter writers and most letter writers know how to do this, but ask them to talk about how they know you. Ask them to take a little bit of time to situate themselves in terms of their own position. I have been here for 20 years. I have seen, many, many doctoral students come through, and, this is an outstanding candidate because, so even if they aren't well known, I'm sure they have experience that gives them credit. And if they can do that in their letter, that can be helpful in and of itself. People who I did not apply for any postdocs. There weren't any available the year I went on the market. But people who I know who have had postdocs, when they get to the stage of their third year as a faculty member, they have so many publications out there. It gives you time to write. It gives you time to just write. And they have such an advantage when they go up for tenure because they have way more publications than I think it's possible to have as a brand new faculty member that goes into a job. So if you can get a postdoc, I would take it. And yeah, I think the other ones have been addressed.
Great. We had one other question pop up in the queue, and then we're going to move on to the final words. Can anyone speak to whether formatting your dissertation as a published, I'm sorry, let me reread this. Some doctoral programs are introducing non-traditional dissertation formats, such as like 3 published manuscripts or publish-worthy articles. Will the format of your dissertation affect the hiring?
No, they're going to offer you before you have finished your dissertation, so they're not even going to see that document. I think one of my colleagues stopped me in the hall just recently and was like, "Oh, I just read your dissertation." And my response to him was like, "Why would you do that? That sounds like a terrible idea." So they're not going to see it before you're finished. And had my institution allowed it, I would have loved to have written 3 articles instead of a traditional dissertation, because then they're ready to submit. But I wasn't allowed to do that.
Yeah, I think if you're applying for jobs in your ABD and you're working on your dissertation and that's where you are in the process, they are way more interested in you being able to speak to the implications of your work and like concretely like where it's taking you in the field and where it's going to position you in the field than they are in like actually what you wrote. Like Michiko said, like it's very likely like the actual dissertation is going to be read by like 6 people and the first acknowledgements page by your mom.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to final thoughts here. And I know that there might still be some other burning questions that pop up. And so folks, if that is you, if you have a lingering question, I would encourage you to go ahead and send it along to us via email. And we can pass them along and perhaps get a written response. But as a final word, would each of you mind sharing just briefly what do you wish you had known before embarking on the job market, or what would be the most important piece of advice you would have for us?
I'll start because I'm reiterating something I said at the very beginning, which is look at yourself and look at what it is that you really like to do. I just think that Research One universities they want you to focus a lot of your time on publishing in top tier journals. That's a very competitive, very kind of nose to the grindstone focus on writing in a very particular way for a particular audience. If that is what really gets you psyched and you want to write grants and bring in money and do your research, then I think an R1 is an important, it would be the right kind of place for your personality. If you love teaching, liberal arts schools, teaching focused schools will still give you opportunities for research. So it's not like you have to throw that out the door, but maybe it's probably more teaching focused and it's no less prestigious. And I think that there's this kind of perception anyway that, R1s are somehow more prestigious, and they aren't. On whose metric? So if you love teaching, just be honest with yourself and let yourself pursue those teaching focused positions. Because if you get yourself into a job where you are someone who you don't want to be, or you're being asked to be someone who you aren't truly in your heart, you won't be happy.
I think those are wise words. I think just so one of the things that my mentor said to me was that this is about what you want to do, and so don't feel like you're disappointing me, because I think like a lot of people are like, well, he's worked so hard and he's done so much for me, I don't want to disappoint him. And he was like, this isn't about me, this is about you, and I want you to go to the place where you feel good. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of this that is outside of our control, and it feels really stressful, and everything sort of feels high stakes. And the attitude that I tried to take then, and the attitude that I continue to try to take, is, you know what, this is what I have to offer, and I'm going to offer it with a smile and as graciously as I can, and I'm going to work hard, and then just see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I haven't failed, and I can either go on the job market again the next year. So there are several people in my program who the year they went up on the job market, it just wasn't a good year. So, like last year was an amazing year for secondary literacy, but not for elementary literacy. So we had several students who just didn't get jobs, and you can go up on the market again. So when I was in graduate school, there was one of the students ahead of me had gone up on the market. He didn't get a job. He went and taught 7th grade English for a year, and then he went to an institution that he loves. So it's scary. And there's so much that we can't control. And we just are gentle with ourselves and do the best we can. And when you go somewhere, they really want you to succeed. They're investing a lot in you. And so when you need something or ask for it, like ask for mentorship, go to people who you think might be able to help you, because people really do want you to succeed.
Yeah, I echo all of that. And I think the final piece that I might add is that your identity is so caught up at this stage in that dissertation and in where you'll be headed. And it's important to do everything you can to remind yourself that this is not all you are. And that while none of us would be doing a PhD and entering academia if we weren't very committed to this part of our identity, it is not all that encompasses us and makes us worthwhile. And during the years of job searching, it can be very difficult to remember that. And so fostering things that you that might bring you joy, not Marie Kondo style, but like other, like that bring you joy. Like I took up pottery, like throwing pottery during the year that I was on the job market and writing my dissertation. And it was like the one place that I could go and find centering sort of thoughts and energy. And it kept me grounded. And so I strongly recommend that you don't let this become everything about who you are, as hard as that might be.
I'm so glad you said that, Alex.
I took a yoga teacher training when I was writing my dissertation and on the job market, and Ramon told me don't do it, and I did it anyway because for exactly the reasons you said, Alex, of just being grounded. The one thing I will say about getting a job, the hardest part was that I hadn't anticipated, was just going to a place where I didn't know anybody, and it's really, 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 really I had never been to Ohio before. I had to look it up on a map when I left my interview because I didn't know where I was. And I didn't have a support system here. And that was a really hard adjustment for me. I moved here by myself. And so just keeping in mind those kinds of things and making sure that you have something, you do a lot of self-care through this whole process is important to just remember.
Wow, I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists for all of the wisdom that you've shared today, both in terms of like going on the job market and being in academia, but also how to be humans in this work. There's so much that you've shared today that there's no way we could have gone in knowing. Folks, before we head out for this evening, I do want to remind you to stay connected with us via Facebook or Twitter. If you're not a member of one of the SIGs or both of the SIGs, we encourage you to become a part of them. At the next webinar, which we'll be hosting in March, we'll be talking about how to find your scholarly home. And so if you're wondering which SIG is right for you, whether it's LSP, SLR, or one of the other ones, that'll be the conversation that we're having. So we look forward to seeing you there in March, and hopefully seeing you at AERA as well. We will be sending out a follow-up email with the recording from today's webinar, along with the notes, as well as the materials that our panelists have so graciously offered to share. They'll be passing along some of the tools that they've used to stay organized, and some sample job materials that can act as mentor text. So thank you again. We really appreciate all of you being here this evening and sticking around for a little extra time as well. That's it. Have a great night.
Good luck.
Thank you, Christina, Laura, and Amanda. Thank you for having us.
Yes,
Great
it's good to see everybody.
Yeah,
Yes,
good to
thank
see you. Good to meet you.
Thank you for participating, everyone. This has been wonderful.
Take good care. Stay warm.
Bye, guys. Yes, everybody stay warm.
You too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Okay.
Hey, Christina, I will,
Yes. Sorry, I didn't unmute myself.
yeah, I will just look over the notes and add some things because I was talking or also engaged in the just listening.
Yeah.
So give me a minute to refresh the notes, and then I can send them your way. Okay.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna wait also to get the materials from
Yeah. Okay.
Amy Chico and Alex. So we'll just send all of it out together. So I don't think it's gonna go out tonight.
Okay. Perfect.
And I don't think you have to.
I have an interview
Yeah.
tomorrow morning that I need to get ready.
Oh my gosh. Go prepare.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
serious timing.
It's madness. All of this is madness, but this was really helpful. So thank you to both of you, because you put in a lot of work to make this happen. And I'm grateful for it. We had such lovely panelists, as we always do, but this was especially a nice bunch.
Yeah, definitely. It's been wonderful. And then I'm figuring probably in the next week or two, we can have a conversation about who we want to invite for the last webinar.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a faster turnaround this time with AERA happening in early April.
Yeah. I'm already starting to think about who, and I'm thinking it would be a good space to like highlight or showcase some grad students who have like figured out how to navigate that system. So
Definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Yay.
All right, ladies.
Well, have a great night, everybody.
Stay warm. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Yes, good luck on the interview.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.